I am floating, literally floating in blackness, just complete blackness. I see far off a little pinprick of light, and it gets larger and larger and larger. And then I heard really loud, really, really loud, "This one's not dead." Turned around, and there's this man all dressed in white. And all I can think is, this is God. This is definitely God.
Welcome to the Curious Soul Podcast. I'm Christina Malavenda.
And I'm Marty Go. We're two best friends exploring the deeper meaning of life
And the moments that connect us all.
Hi, Christina.
Hi, Marty. I'm sure that you're having the best day ever because we're about to talk about one of your favorite things ever, which is near-death experiences.
Yes, near-death experiences, or NDE. And for those who don't know what an NDE is, they are profound psychological events reported by people who are close to death or have clinically died. While the very common features include out-of-body sensations, moving through a tunnel toward a bright light, a life review, and feelings of overwhelming peace, love, or encountering deceased loved ones. And you are correct, Christina. We are talking about one of the most favorite subjects I've ever encountered in life. I can't get enough of it. I just consume it because I'm like, what is this? We're having a fantastic, fascinating, amazing guest today. I've heard his story, and when I heard it, it changed my life. And I think that his book and his lessons and the things that he's gone through have really inspired me, especially to do what we're doing today through this podcast. So let me tell you who we're meeting today. His name is Vinney, or Vincent Tolman. He was born in Arlington, Texas. He has worked as a home builder, computer technician, and also a producer for the TV and film industry, as we do. Vinney has had a profound near-death experience, which gifted him with an increased spiritual awareness and a keen spiritual ear for advice and insight from God and the guides that God has assigned to us. He has also mastered valuable tools that help you to create a powerful personal transformation. Welcome to the show, Vincent Tolman. Hi, Vinney. How's it going?
Good. Nice to see you, Marty.
It's absolutely fantastic to have you with us today.
Yeah, great to meet you both, definitely. And on a real bear of a day, too.
You saw a bear,
tell us
right?
about that.
Yeah, so I was a little late today because I did have a little visitor, and my little visitor is this guy right here. So had a little visitor come to my house.
Oh my
It's
God.
black bear. Some people call them Carolina black bears, but just a black bear. And I live in the Appalachian Mountains, so it's normal. Like, my closest neighbors are my deer friends because it's all deer.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Dad jokes. I love
Yeah.
it.
And I get visited every single day, about 10 times a day, by deer.
Oh my
And
God.
sometimes we get overrun with so many that we're looking around and you cannot even count how many there are. So
Wow.
they're very energetic, the deer, and they will come when they feel like they need to send you any energy or get your energy. So it's
Really?
pretty interesting. Yeah.
Vinney, we are so excited to have you here today. I've heard your story and I just am so fascinated by it. I cannot wait for Christina to hear it and for our audience to listen to it because it's really life-changing. I read your book and was very, very moved. The first thing we like to ask all our guests is, specifically for you, for anyone who's curious about the other side, what's something that you've learned from your NDE that would make them go, wow?
That there is a love that's more powerful than you could even imagine, and that love runs the whole system. And that love is so powerful that we have to go through a veil of forgetfulness just so that we won't be affected by that love. Because if we can remember that love, it really controls us. It does. It controls how we make our decisions because it's that powerful. But yeah, there's a love that's more powerful than we can comprehend.
Oh, that's
More
beautiful.
powerful. Yeah.
So, before we talk about your near death experience itself, could you take us back to who you were before it happened and then walk us through the event that changed everything for you?
Yeah, I was a bodybuilder, amateur, and I was a filmmaker. I worked as a producer and a
Oh my god,
production
that's awesome.
assistant on film and TV too. I did
Awesome.
TV
Yeah.
for 2.5 years, and so that was me. I was building homes, making movies, doing some bodybuilding, and I was getting in lots of fights and being a real hothead at bars and clubs and doing all sorts of recreational chemical therapies
Mm.
is what I
Yeah.
want to call it.
I
And
love it.
yeah, and so
Therapies.
it wasn't the smartest life, but I did clean up my life right before all this happened. I sobered up. I stopped drinking, and from that day forward, I started to really clean up my life and refocus myself on the bodybuilding, and that's when my experience starts.
That's awesome. We're also filmmakers, which I wanna ask you about
That's
later and
cool. That's
how this
awesome.
kind of all ties in together. We met at USC, so I produced her thesis, and
Oh, that's
we've been making
awesome.
movies together for years, so that's
Yeah.
really cool that you had
Yeah.
that experience.
Yeah, I
Um,
worked. I worked on Touched by an Angel. That was my
oh
Oh,
my
show.
god, that's amazing.
So I started out as an extra, then a stand-in, then dedicated stand-in, and then one day
Wow.
someone came up to me and said, "Are you a PA?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And I didn't know what a PA was. And I just said, "Where do you need me? Where do you need me?" And
Yeah.
then bam, I became a PA for that show and worked as a PA for 2 years. So
Which is
I was
which
there.
how which is a
Yeah.
can I just say what a PA is? A PA is a production assistant, for
Production
those of
Yes.
you who
assistant,
don't
Yeah.
yeah,
know what that is.
Yeah.
yeah.
But
And I
then
love that you
I
were on Touched
I
by an Angel, which is so, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
ironic, right?
So there's a lot of episodes you can see me in them. My mom
Yes.
too. I got my mom in
Oh,
the
that's awesome.
show, and just as extras, the PAs are in charge of the extras, or at least they help direct what extras are supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And that was my favorite job. So I love that job. And sometimes we'd be a little short on extras, so we'd throw some PAs in there, and it was a
Yep,
lot of
yep.
fun. So I'm in probably like 25, 30 episodes. Yeah.
Oh
Wow.
my god, now we have to do it like a Where's Waldo, Where's Vinney?
Yeah.
I love that. So yeah, tell us about your NDE.
My NDE starts back in 2003. It was about a year after Touched by an Angel was canceled. So I was going back to the construction world and cleaning up my life. And I was getting into this bodybuilding very seriously. I took a new supplement. It was about a year old at the time, but was so popular you couldn't get it at any of your supplement stores. Everybody was sold out. They'd been sold out for like 6, 7 months. And I went online and got some from a company in Thailand. What I didn't know though is this Thailand company was selling a pure extract solution. And what we were getting in the United States was a watered down, only 5% pure solution. So, I couldn't read the Thai script, but I trusted the country, which they do great food and drug in
Yeah.
Thailand. But I couldn't read it. I couldn't read the label, and like an ignorant fool, I took my normal dosage, and it was 20 times the dosage I should have taken, and so it
Oh
was
my god.
instantly toxic for me, and it started to affect my body like anesthesia, like anesthetics. I started to feel really cold come over my chest and my legs, just like if you're going under anesthetic. And right away, I knew I needed to eat some food to try to metabolize this. So we went over to a little local Dairy Queen. It was the closest restaurant to our where we were staying. And I made it into the bathroom. I stumbled in and I barely made it into the bathroom. I locked the door because it was a single use bathroom. So just out of habit, I locked that door. And it was there that the whole room started to spin on me. And then I heard this very loud, like, crack, and I'm pretty positive that crack was my head hitting the ground like a melon.
Wow.
And the next thing I know, I am floating, literally floating in blackness, just complete blackness. But I notice right away there's no pain. And when you're a bodybuilder, you're always in pain. You're always in
Mhm.
pain. Every single day it hurts to exist. But that's part of the joy of bodybuilding is
Yeah.
working through the pain. Well, right away
Right.
I noticed there's no pain. And I'm like, wow, this stuff's so good. It's taking away all my pain. And then I felt that I was floating and I could feel distinctly that my feet weren't touching any ground anywhere. So I was thinking like, whoa, this is weird. This isn't something I'm used to. And then I see far off a little pinprick of light, and it gets larger and larger and larger. And it's kind of like the being inside of a tunnel, and the light gets closer as you approach the edge of the tunnel. Because what started to approach was this little circle of an image. And as it got bigger and bigger and bigger, I realized it was the scene of this bathroom. And I was looking down from above, and me, the movie nerd, all I
Yeah.
can think is why did the DP or why did the director shoot this thing from above? That's so dumb. Like you can only see the top of people's heads. You can't even see their full mouth as it moves. And I just kept thinking that, like, why did the director of
Bad movie.
photography shoot this from above? It doesn't make sense. But I still watched, and I'm sitting here looking at this dead body. I don't I don't think it's me, because me is up here watching the show, and
Mhm.
I watch this scene progress. I took this supplement with my buddy, and he had stumbled into the Dairy Queen and collapsed on a booth. Well, he had vomited all over the booth. So the manager had called 911. They hauled him away. I watched them haul him away. And
Wow.
special me, I didn't think that I could be connected to this movie. I'm just thinking
Wow.
like, oh, that's my buddy. He's in this movie. But here's the funny thing. I got him into a lot of episodes of Touched by an Angel. So
Uh-huh.
I was used to seeing him here and there in shows. I was. And it was a lot of fun for the both of us to get into those shows together. Well, I was watching him. I watched them pull away in an ambulance with him, and I tried to go with him, and I made it a little bit away from the building, and then I was pulled back to the building. And again, ignorant me, I'm thinking, well, this is a weird show. Why couldn't I go with what I wanted? And later, a customer in the restaurant tried to use the bathroom quite a few times and realized the door was locked. So he got the manager to open that door, and they found the body. They found it was already dead. They
Ugh.
could tell by the temperature that it felt cold to the touch. They went ahead and still called 911, got an ambulance there. The second ambulance that showed up was a three-man crew, and the third man was a rookie, brand new guy in his early 20s. And he felt like he wanted to do a lot more than what they were doing. He's what
Mhm.
they call a greenhorn or a greenie. He felt like, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing this? But
Yeah.
here's the funny thing. Every thought he had, I could hear out loud.
Wow.
And
Wow.
every thought of everyone in the restaurant, I could hear out loud.
Like,
And so
simultaneously?
simultaneously, yeah, but
Wow.
it would work according to my focus. So if I put my
Uh,
focus on someone, I could hear every thought they had. If I moved my
wow.
focus to someone else, I could hear their thoughts. But it was very intriguing to me. I was very invested in this movie, and I was watching as, the surprise and the drama of them finding this dead body. And I even had the thought of, their FX guy and their makeup guy is not very good because it looks like a fake dead body. Because the throat, the neck was swollen wider than the jaw.
Oh,
Oh my
wow.
god.
And I'm gonna date myself a little bit, but I used to have this He-Man character, and he was called Manny Faces. He had lots of faces,
Yeah.
and he had a
Mhm.
really thick neck like that, kind of like the
Yeah, I remember.
Juggernaut on Marvel.
Oh, totally,
And
yeah.
and so I was looking at this, and I'm like, "Oh, this is like Manny Faces. If this is a real guy, what a poor soul. No one
Oh
could love a
my
face like
god.
that." And I'm not still, I'm so detached from it. I'm just
So
feeling like
interesting.
an observer. I'm even critiquing, camera angles still, and it's just crazy. And so the medics do declare the body dead. They tried a bunch of stuff, but it didn't work. They went ahead, this one particular team, they worked with search and rescue on a regular basis. So they did have body bags on the medic unit. So they pulled one of those body bags, they put the body in, they zipped it up, They strapped it. There's all these straps they put on the gurney to hold it tight. They put that in the back of the ambulance, and they told the rookie, they said, "You sit right here and you babysit this body. Don't let anybody touch it." And so he sat there, and I could hear him for 25, 35 minutes,
Oh my gosh.
like berating himself, like, "Why didn't you speak up? Why don't you just try this? Why don't you
Wow.
just try this?"
Wow.
And so he was a good 35, 40 minutes while these other two medics were getting witness statements. They were getting paperwork signed. There was one round of paperwork they had to wait for a police officer to get there, and they would trade paperwork with this police officer, and the police officer said, "Yeah, go ahead and turn the body in." They went ahead and got in the ambulance. This is about 35, 40 minutes after they had found and declared the body dead.
Wow.
They are leaving the scene, and this rookie, he starts to glow, literally glow around his heart, just around his heart. And it was it's not like in a movie where they would shine a light on your heart. It's like
Yeah.
the light was coming out of his heart.
Wow.
And
It
I
was, like,
was noticing
emanating
it.
from his heart.
And it's funny because,
Wow.
being that I worked on Touched by an Angel, we
Yeah.
would do these special effects with lights from above the head and from
Mhm.
like 15 degrees left, 15 degrees right from behind to make you
Mhm.
feel like they were glowing. But this
Mhm.
was literal glowing from his heart.
Oh my
And then
god.
I heard really loud, really, really loud, "This one's not dead." And when that was said, I looked around, I could feel it coming from behind me. It wasn't in the movie. It was coming from behind me, but it was delivering to the movie. And I didn't understand it. I just knew it was a very powerful voice. And I saw the rookie like receive the message, but I heard him say right away, "That's just your imagination. That wasn't real." And so he didn't do anything. And then about 100 feet further down the road, I heard it again. The second time was even more powerful. And this rookie, by then, he was glowing from the waist to his head. Like the
Wow.
glow had grown expansively. And when it hit him the second time so loud, he heard it. So did I. "This one's not dead." He acted instantly. He unzipped the body bag. When he got to the top, he had to go to here, and there was a strap right here. So he had to undo this strap and open the body bag further, and he was feeling all around the neck. He couldn't feel any sign of life. So then he had to undo a strap here, another strap here, and another strap in the abdomen, and even another strap on the hip so he could get down to the femur area or the femoral artery. And so it's finally down when he was on the femur, he felt something, and I felt something. We simultaneously jumped. And to me, I felt
Wow.
someone shock me with an electrical charge. And what he felt, I got to meet him and talk to him later. He
Oh my
he didn't
god.
remember that shock at all. He just remembered feeling a sense that something was alive in this body. And
Wow.
to him, that was enough. He broke protocol. He went ahead. He got oxygen forced into the lungs. He hooked up the body to a defib machine. He shocked it once, there was no change. He shocked it a second time, and there was a single heartbeat, and then it was back to no change. And then the third round, he shocked, and it was a steady heartbeat showing up.
Oh
So
my god.
it was a miracle in itself that this guy listened to this. But
Uh-huh.
here's the big miracle is from the time they pronounced my body dead, which it was likely already dead an hour, it was pronounced dead and then revived 47 minutes apart. So
Whoa.
on record, I have a time of death recorded in their paperwork. Even though it wasn't filed with the state, it was filed with their paperwork. And then
Whoa.
like a revised or revision to that time of death, and it's 47 minutes apart.
Whoa.
Wow.
And one of the neat miracles to all this all happened literally in front of a brand new hospital. So
Oh
this
my
brand new
god.
hospital, it had 3 or 4 teams of highly qualified professionals ready to go ahead and jump into action to try to save this guy. So
Yeah.
I watched as they transferred the body from the medical gurney onto the hospital bed, And as they did, the body went into a full seizure, like full on seizure everywhere. So they were strapping down the body to try to administer some of the treatments they needed to administer. And when they did, I felt someone strap my arm, specifically on my left arm, where I'm left-handed, and that was my strongest arm. I felt someone strap my left arm, and I looked down, and I was looking at the arm of the body. And
Whoa.
at that moment, it was this moment of just heavy, heavy energy, and it came and just smothered me. And all I could think was, how could I be so stupid that I'm watching my own death for more than an hour and I don't even know? How how could I be so dumb? I'm so thinking this is a movie and I'm analyzing it as a movie, but yet it's my story and it was my death.
Wow.
I was the bad Hollywood job. I was the guy with the neck swollen wider than his jaw. Like, how could I not know that was me? And
Wow.
as soon as I had all that dark energy come into me, I then rewound time and I started seeing every little bad thing I ever did, even as a little child. Even
Whoa.
at 3 years old, I'd take a toy out of someone's hands. I saw that, but I also felt what it felt like for them to have their toy removed out of their hands. I
Yeah.
saw
So wait, how
every
did you
little
see, like,
thing.
a movie play out in front of you?
It
And,
was,
like,
but
what space was it?
it was very quick, it was very fast, and it was
Mhm.
interactive. I call it a butterfly review because I could feel the effect, both positive and negative, of everything that I ever did, but I felt the negative first. I had to get the
Mm.
negative out of the way. And then as soon
Oh.
as I was done feeling the negative, I then started to feel the positive and see the positive and see that my positive life review was like 8 times longer than my negative one. There was
No,
so
that's
much
good.
more. And even though I was a hothead, a drug addict, I had all my own problems back then, I still was doing good things. There was even times where I saw myself either high or strung out, taking care of other people, and I
Mhm.
thought that was really cool that was a way to know that that's my true soul, that it wants to
Mhm.
take care of people and not do harm to people. And,
Right.
not that I needed to figure that out, but it was neat for me to see that in my infancy all the way into my adulthood, there was this boy that was trying to help people in his
Mm,
own
yeah.
way, and
Yeah.
and what's neat is as I
Yeah.
got to the end of my positive life review, there was this river of love pouring over me, and it was
Wow.
truly like a full river of love, and I could feel it, and all I could feel was, "I'm not worthy of this. They've got the wrong guy. Why is this coming to me?" And I knew that I it was coming from behind me, so I turned around, and there's this man all dressed in white. He's got a long white beard, long white hair, and all I can think is, "This is God. This is definitely God." And
Mhm.
without him using his mouth, he just smiled and said using his thoughts, "No, son, I'm not God." And I'm sitting there thinking like, what are the other options? And the only thing that comes out of me is, "Are you Jesus then?" And even though it didn't make sense, I didn't know what to say, but I just had this thought, "Well, if he's not God, is he Jesus then?" And he laughed again, he smiled, and he said, "No, son, I'm not Jesus. I'm here to be your guide. I'm here to lovingly show you, that you can go anywhere in the universe that you wanna go." And he pointed back to my body and he said, "I can take you back to your body if you want." And I looked back at the body and it looked like hell. And I said, "No, I don't want that." And he said, "Well, where would you like to go? I can take you anywhere in the universe." And for a millisecond, my sci-fi brain got really excited for a second, like
Yeah, yeah.
anywhere in the universe, but I couldn't forget about that love that was just cascading over my body. And so I asked him, I go, "Can we go to where that love is coming from? I know that that river of love is coming from somewhere. Can I go there?" And he said he got very excited and he with his animated smile, he's like, "That's our home. I wanna take you there. That would be really great. I wanna take you there." And I said, "Let's do it. Let's go home." And he explained it was my home, it was his home, it was both of our home. And so we began this journey. We went on I call it the 3-day journey because I was brain dead for 3 days.
Oh,
And
wow.
and while I was in that coma and brain dead, I got to experience transitioning to heaven. I got a little bit of a baby tourist version of heaven, and then I was forced back into my body. But what a journey at that point. I got to start learning, number one, why we're even on earth. And that's one of the first things he brought up to me is he said, "Do you know why you're on earth?" And I said, "Yeah, we're here to be tested, to either to be saved or to be thrown away." And he
Hmm.
said, "No, I love that you think that's what it is, but we're on earth to learn. And that's it, to learn how to create, to learn how to build relationships, to learn how to love. And that's the primary reason why we come to earth." And just before that, he had told me that the most important thing for me to learn on my journey is that authenticity is the only path to God. That we can't
Wow.
get to God, to our creator, to our home without knowing who we really are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many questions, so many thoughts that I that
So
I
many
have that
questions.
we're just gonna go down all these different paths. But
Okay.
I just love this parallel of you being on a show and then this happening to you and your
Yes.
interpretation of it. Like I just wanna
Yeah.
point that out. I think that's
I also want
amazing.
to add to that because I feel like filmmakers or people who are behind the scenes, when I hear NDEs, it feels like you're watching a movie. And I feel
It
like there's so
does.
many
Yeah.
parallels into
Yeah.
like people who are able to examine our lives like movies. Isn't that what we're doing? We're doing it consciously though, but we're doing it with other people's lives. So it's like we're
Yeah.
learning through these different lessons. Oh, it's so
Yes.
cool.
Again, so many questions. One of them is that you talk about thoughts and being able
Mhm.
to hear those thoughts. Like to me, when I hear that, it shows that thoughts are so powerful, that they
Oh,
have this
so
essence to them.
powerful. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what did you take away from that if you did take something away from
Well,
being able to hear them?
I ended up finding out my guide's name. He said I could
Oh,
call
that's
him
so
Drake.
awesome.
This was 2003 before the R&B Drake
Before
came
Drake.
out. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this is even before Google. So this is pre-Google,
Yeah.
pre a lot of things, pre-technology. But he said you can call me Drake, and he even referenced that those who are close to me call me Drake. And I didn't pick up on that until far later when I found out who he really was. And but he showed me that our thoughts. He taught me 10 very distinct principles. And number 7, which seven's one of my favorite numbers because I was
Me
born
too.
on
Yeah.
the 7th of 77, and I was born
Okay,
in
yeah.
in the month that is called 9, but it means 7. So
Hmm.
so September, which means 7. I was born September 77. So it's like,
Oh, wow, yeah.
in a
That's your
way,
number.
I was born 7/7/77.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
7 is really important because it's so impactful for us here. The 7th principle he taught me is that thoughts are our magic wands, and we can create with thoughts or we can destroy with thoughts. But
Mhm.
Mhm.
it's we have to understand that we are the creator of our own thoughts, but we are not the creator of the thoughts we observe in our mind. So let me state that again.
Yeah.
We are the creator of our own thoughts, but we are not the creator of the thoughts we observe in our mind.
Yeah,
So it
Mhm.
okay.
means thoughts will come through us that are good, not good, mediocre. They're not necessarily from us. We are observing them, but
Mhm.
sometimes we'll have a negative thought and we'll think, how dare we think that?
Yeah.
That's not us. We're the observer of the thought,
Yeah.
but it's what we do with those thoughts that matters.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
So
the
you can
thoughts
let that
themselves,
thought
yeah,
pass.
we create with our thoughts. We
Yeah.
literally create. Yeah.
Before we keep going, if this conversation is resonating with you, please take a second to like, subscribe, or share it with someone who might need to hear it. It really helps us reach more curious souls, and honestly, this is exactly why we wanted to create this show.
Yes, and if someone came to mind while you were listening, send it to them. They might be meant to hear this too.
You mentioned the 3 days in your experience of heaven. Is
Mhm.
there anything specific that you saw in those 3 days?
Yes.
Oh my god, it's so much.
Crazy stuff, crazy stuff, and it's funny because I was a heavy drug user before the
Mhm.
experience
Mhm.
and not after. I didn't touch it after, but I knew what delusion and, um, what the brain could create, and this was, a trillion times better than what a a drugged brain could create as far as illusion. So, I saw heaven, and I saw this place that just the grass alone is worth dying a million times just so
Wow.
you can touch this grass. The grass is so full of unconditional love for us. And what's really amazing about it is as you get close to this grass and you start to touch it, it feels as if this is your charger to refill your battery. And you've been waiting a whole lifetime to get back here.
Wow.
And there's so much love in just a single blade of this grass that if we brought that single blade of grass here, it's more power than the entire universe has.
Mm.
And it would explode our universe if we brought something so powerful here. And that's
Wow.
one blade of millions of blades that are so excited to meet you, the individual. And just like before, I had this thought like, why me? What did I ever do? Like I'm not anyone special. In fact, I'm the opposite. I'm the least special on earth. And the grass said, because you're you. And I said, well, no, I'm just Vinny. And they said, yeah, you're Vinny. You're you. And they were so excited about it. It's kind
Wow.
of like the toddler who's so excited to see their mom or their dad or their grandma or their grandpa. They're so freaking excited, and when you get that excitement, you're like, "What do I do with this? Like, I don't deserve this." That's what it felt like.
Vinny,
Yeah.
this gives me goosebumps because I've had 2 experiences where I felt like I was tapped into source, but I was 12 years old, so I didn't really understand. I knew it meant something deeper and spiritual and all that, but I'd never heard of other people experiencing that until
Mhm.
more recently and understood what it actually was. But one of those times I was sitting on my bed looking at myself in the mirror, and that's exactly what happened. I just had this sense of how special it was that I was who I was. That
Yeah.
exact that exact feeling, and that it's like I've been describing it as euphoria because that's kind of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
only thing that I can really
It is
describe it
euphoria,
as.
but it's
I mean,
real
even you
euphoria. It's not chemical
yeah.
activated, it's real euphoria.
You
Yeah.
know what's weird about you even talking about it? I feel it. I feel this river of
Yes.
love that is, like,
Yeah.
indescribable. I literally can feel it, which is really weird. It's awesome.
Well, I'll tell
But
you,
please
it's
yeah, keep telling
life-changing.
me.
It's life-changing. I want you to tell you this. If you had the most horrible life, which I did, up until I was 11 years old, I probably received more trauma than most people receive in 10 or 20 lifetimes. There
I'm
was a
so
lot
sorry.
of trauma poured into that first 11 years, but it
Mhm.
was by design. It was by design. It
Mhm.
was my own design. It was my own contract that I wrote up and I signed. And I'm glad that I did it. But because I had so much trauma, when I got there and I felt that grass and I felt that love, that unconditional love, I now knew why I signed up for all that.
Mhm.
I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I had signed up for it. And I knew that this was the reason why. The
Yeah.
love I was feeling from this grass, I could feel all of creation coming together in this grass and feel every blade celebrating my return. And
Wow.
each blade of grass had like its own aroma and taste. Just touching it, you would taste like this sweet, warm, loving feeling in your mouth. But you would
Wow.
also smell like all these different aromas, and it was very aromatic and perfumey, but not the cheap human
Yeah.
perfume, like very almost like jasmine and very sweet smells that you smell in nature, and and lilacs and so much sweetness I could smell in the air, and then the grass itself had these rainbows like coming off of them, And as you would get near, it would be like, "Ooh, so many rainbows coming off of it." And when you
Oh
would
my
touch
god.
it, when you would touch the grass itself, it would be like connecting that rainbow with all the universe, and it would just like shine out of the grass. And
Wow.
it's something that can't be faked. It can't be mimicked. You know for a fact that the universe is so excited to have you back
Wow.
in its hands. And that's when Drake looked at me and he goes, "If you think the grass is good, you should see the flowers." And I was like, "There's flowers? What?" And so I freaked out about flowers. And then when I was freaking out about flowers, he said, "You should see the trees." And I was like, "There's trees." I just couldn't get enough. And when I was having all this experience with the grass, the flowers, the trees, I did feel a tap on my toe. And I looked down and I actually heard the sentence, "Do you want us on you?" And I looked
Huh.
down and saw water. But I said, "Yes." I said, whatever us is, yes, I want it on me." I'm like, "I'm all in. This whole thing is so freaking badass. I want as much as I can of this." So the water came up over my toes, over my feet, came up and over my body, and actually completed its connection on top of my head. And when it did, there was like a shoot of a spark out the top of my head, and then there was a boom, like a very loud, just like boom, as the water completed. And what I found is because there was a lot of trauma and damage on my soul from my childhood, it was being rectified. It was being healed. It was being cleaned up. And really, what was being done is I was being loved, which was the opposite of what I had in my trauma.
Mm.
I was having complete love, and that water, it completed that healing. And, a lot of people say that, I should be brain dead, and some people might argue I still am. But, all these doctors and neurologists and cardiologists would tell you, you know, "I'm unexplainable, I'm some kind of miracle." But I'm telling you, the miracle was done right there, that I knew I was coming into a brain dead body, and so they had to load me up with the magic so that I could come in and heal myself and just
That's
wake up as soon as I was
awesome.
back. And that's what happened after when I was done, when I left heaven. Yeah.
That is amazing, amazing, amazing. Can we go? I know that Drake brought you through so many lessons, and I want to go back to what you said about authenticity because that is something I'm
Yeah.
dealing with right now. And I found it so surprising that the number one way for happiness is authenticity. Can
Yeah.
you please speak more on that? Like, how is
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely. So imagine love is water, okay? And that's
Right.
easy to imagine after what I just explained with water, right?
Mhm.
Imagine love is water, and authenticity is allowing your real bucket to be what it is, whether it be a big bucket, a small bucket, whether it be a bucket full of holes or a bucket without holes. But the only way to have that bucket not have holes is authenticity. That means,
Uh,
some of us are walking around with all this love for everyone else, but no love for ourselves.
yeah.
That authentically does not work because we cannot have love for anyone else if we can't have love for ourselves.
Hmm.
Zero possibility. And so Drake showed me that I have to learn how to love Vinney before I can ever love anyone else. Now, I could pretend love. I could even reflect love. The love that someone's sending to me, I could reflect it back. And I was really good at that, but I was
Uh-huh.
not good at having actual love for me. So that was the first lesson he had to teach me, is that there were more than 100 Vinnies out there. I would put on a mask of the Vinney I thought that my friends wanted, I thought that my family wanted, that I thought my job at Caroline Productions wanted. You know, I would become who people thought that or I thought that they wanted, but I was not my true self totally in all those places. I was a
Mhm.
portion of myself, but only a portion. And when we can find who we truly are and we can wake up and take off all the masks and all the false coverings, we can find a happiness in authenticity that is absolutely amazing, because when we find our authentic self, we don't have to become anything else.
Mhm.
And we're not looking for the acceptance of the world or the rejection of it. And if the world accepts us, great. But if they reject us, great. We don't care, because we already love ourselves.
Yeah.
And in that power, you fill all the holes in your bucket. And now you can carry large pails of true love, and you can use that love to pour on others. But until you do, you're dealing with a holy bucket. You're dealing with a bucket full of holes. Yeah.
How do you practice that? If you've been taught your whole life that something's wrong with you in the way that the things that you like or are interested in, or how you act or how you look, how do you practice self love? How do you bring that back to you?
So, the big thing is to recognize that the world is not going to teach this to you.
Right.
The outside world will teach you the opposite of authentic love. You have to go
Mhm.
to the inside world. Go to where you were when you were 5 years old. Um, if you walk into a playground full of 5 year olds, okay, and you say, "Hey, little girl, you're a purple crayon," she'd be like, "Okay, thanks," and she'd go around pretend she's a purple crayon for a minute, right?
Yeah.
But if I saw a woman on the street wearing a purple dress and I walked up to her and I said, "Ugh, you look like a purple crayon," she'd be like, "Oh," probably give me the middle finger, slap me, be very
Yeah.
upset, and I would have ruined her day.
Right.
But hypothetically, they were the same woman,
Yeah.
one that won the child and one the grown up. But why is it when she was 5 years old, it didn't bother her a lick? It's because she wasn't trying to earn the love of the world yet. And that's where we find our authentic self. Is the world cannot make you feel valuable. I work
Yeah.
with I work with athletes, I work with movie stars, I work with billionaires.
Yeah.
I've done work with someone who's considered a trillionaire. Like, I've worked with some of the highest elements of the world, and I've worked with
Yeah.
homeless people, I've worked
Yeah.
with incarcerated people, I've worked with the whole gamut, okay?
Yeah.
And in that whole gamut, there are some people on the highest echelons of income and what the world would say is respect,
Right.
and they are extremely unhappy people.
Yeah.
They have zero happiness in their life. But then I go work with a man who peddles a taxi in Cambodia, and he's the happiest freaking person I've met in my life. And I
Wow.
ask him, I go, "What's your address?" And he says, "My taxi." And I'm like, "Where do
Wow.
you sleep?" And he's like, "My taxi. Isn't that amazing? I go around
Wow.
with my home everywhere I go." And he's so excited about that. And he's
Oh
he's
my
he's
god.
authentically excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference in this world. It doesn't matter our success or
Mhm.
our income.
Mhm.
Authentic self-love is a choice.
Yeah.
And if we can't choose, we need to keep going further into our soul. Keep going further back into our childhood. Because when we were 4 or 5 years old, even a traumatized 4 and 5 year old can authentically self-love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vinny,
That is beautiful.
I just have one more question because I know in the next episode we're going to go into all the things you learned in your near death experience. But we touched upon like the work you were doing before you had this experience, but what was your connection if you had any to spirituality or your concept of what happens after you die, relationships, love? Like what
So
was that?
I was raised Christian. I was raised, I joke around that I was raised evangelical Mormon. Like, I was
Um,
raised in evangelical style, but as a Mormon. And I was raised with very strict boundaries of what is truth and what is falseness. And that includes prejudice.
mhm,
And yes, there's a very strong prejudice in Christianity, but that doesn't come from Christ. That doesn't come from
Yeah.
the leader or the focal point of Christianity. It comes from the leaders, the humanized leaders who have handled the church since. But
Yeah.
one thing you'll notice if you ever study a blue letter Bible, study a red letter Bible, that that Christ teaches us, whether you're a Christian or not, you can learn from this guy, this amazing, amazing being, that while
Mhm.
he's hanging on a cross, he looks over at the criminal next to him. And without baptizing him, without doing all of these things that we think we have to do for salvation, he looks over at him and says, "Yo, dude, by tomorrow, you and we're going to be in my parents' house and we're going to chill." And he doesn't say it to try to prove anything. He says it out of authentic love
Yeah.
because this criminal recognizes that this being that's next to him on a cross, that he's not even worthy to be near him. He's such a love frequency. And it was the recognizing that love frequency that got that acceptance of him to that place. And then, earlier before Christ died, he taught a story about the prodigal son. He taught the story of the son who's the bad guy, who's, squanders all of his finances. He goes and he parties and he's with all the wrong people. He gets to a dead end of life and he becomes so poverty stricken that he realizes that the servants in his father's house eat better than he does. And he thinks, you know what, why not go be a servant unto your father so that you can at least eat and survive. So he goes to his father thinking, that he's going to need to kneel down and beg for forgiveness from dad.
Right.
And at the moment dad sees him, dad drops everything and he runs with all of his might and he starts celebrating that his son is still alive. He holds his son and he yells to his servants and says, "Kill the fatted calf, bring me the finest raiment, the finest clothes that we have, and bring me a silver ring that I can put that ring upon my son's hand and he can remember who he really is. He can put those fine clothes on and know of what family he is."
Mm.
Because once where I thought my son was dead, he is now alive. And the sad thing is Christianity is the good son.
Mhm.
Not all Christianity, but some Christianity is the good son, looking at the bad son saying, "Dad, that's not fair. Like, we've been doing good this whole time. Why don't
Yeah.
you let us judge him? Why can't we judge him? That should be our duty. That should be our okay to judge him and to put him down because now you're lifting him up to be equal with us. We're the
Mhm.
ones who've been doing good the whole time." But what's sad is the sin of the prejudice is just as powerful as the sin of squandering your inheritance.
Mm. Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's what Christ is teaching us.
What do you think the impact of your work and your experiences have on people's lives?
Well, I can tell you from just firsthand and secondhand what I've experienced in the work that I do. Um, I'm a I'm a transformational coach is what I call myself. What I do is I work with people of all walks of life, from stay-at-home homemakers to CEOs and athletes and actors and all sorts of people. I work with people that just want to change their life. But from the get-go, I challenge people, don't begin this journey and don't commit to what comes through. I don't challenge people to do things. What I do is I invite the challenge out of them and they give me the challenge that they're going to follow. But what I do is I help them do that using their intuition and using their higher self or their soul, their spirit. And in doing that work, I've watched people with diseases that they've had for 25, 30 years, and they become cured of their disease. Not because of me, but because they are willing to open up and see where there was a thorn sticking inside their soul, and they were able to pull that thorn out. I've watched MS disappear off of a woman. I've watched cancers disappear off of people. I've watched tumors disappear in 90 minutes, but not because of me. Nothing because of me. It's all because they're willing to open up and find where the trauma had started the problem or started the limiting belief. And now the limiting belief is gone. They're now free to be who they're meant to be. And you'd be surprised in life, when you have a very traumatic event or a very strong emotional event, you have 1 year. You have 1 year. You need to find a home for that trauma, because if you don't, it will plant itself inside you and it will become something. And unfortunately, it becomes terrible things inside of us. All sorts of diseases, cancers, and issues. And in fact, one of the old Greek words for emotion is cancer, cancer.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So that
That
means emotion.
I
Yeah.
Our
could talk to you
ancestors
for
knew it.
hours
Yeah.
about that. That is, like, amazing.
I think it's the idea that, and Marty and I were talking about this the other day, that what we've been seeing through these conversations is that, if we really want to help people, I think like the best way to approach it is, how do we help people like at the soul level, like at this
Yeah.
deep
Yeah.
level
What I
that,
love to do is say, "What's your story and how do we change it?"
yeah.
That's what I love to
Uh,
do.
so if people were to take away one thing from this conversation that you'd want them to really hear it, what would it be?
I would say, "Are you happy with your life?" And I would say a good chunk of your audience is probably
Right.
pretty happy with their life, but there may be parts of their life that they're not happy with. Maybe their health, maybe their income, maybe their ability to show up for their loved ones.
Mhm.
And if you're not happy with one portion or all of your life, don't accept it. Don't
Yeah.
accept it. Go and challenge yourself, open up and find where you're limiting yourself. Your intuition or your subconscious, it holds the keys to unlock every lock in your body. And if you go and play
Yes.
around in that space, you can heal yourself of all sorts of issues. I had a gal that was
Yes.
allergic to pineapple, macadamia, and one other thing. And just after about 90 minutes with her, we figured out what it was. And within a day, she could eat pineapple, macadamia, and
Oh
she'd been
my
allergic for
god.
30 years. Okay.
Oh my god.
I've watched people that were allergic to peanuts that they developed a peanut allergy when they were 6 years old. Guess what? They had a trauma at 5 years old. They had 1 year to deal with it. They didn't. 6 years old, they have a peanut allergy, and they have to go around with like 3 EpiPens, one in their car,
Wow.
one in their house, one in their pocket. Well, we deal with this. We go back and we find the trauma from age 5 years old. We invite the 5 year old into the conscious, and we help him deal with that emotion. And
Yep.
within an hour, this person is eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
We
Something they'd been dreaming of since they were 5 years old. They were
oh
dreaming
my
of eating
god.
it before they were 5 years old.
Oh my god.
That's the
This is so
magic of
crazy
it.
because we've been talking to so many
Mhm.
people about this, like the unconscious, the subconscious, and the conscious level, and bringing those subconscious to the conscious so that you can release it and not only
Yes.
heal, but be able to achieve and get the things that you want in life and that you desire. So that is just more confirmation of everything that we're learning, and I
Yeah,
love
and
that.
for anybody new, go out and read Dolores Cannon, anything Dolores
Yep.
Yes.
Cannon. Go out and
Yes.
read
Yes.
The Body Keeps the Score. These are
Yeah.
great. These are
Yeah.
great appetizers to what is out there for you. And yeah,
I love that.
start the journey ASAP. Yesterday.
Well, I'm excited because your book has really changed Marty's life. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the next episode with you.
Yes, sweet.
If people were moved by this conversation with Vinney and his extraordinary NDE, please join us in the next episode. We're going to go even deeper into these lessons, and we're going to hear more about his guide, Drake, the purpose of our lives, fear, love, and what may lie beyond this life. And we will also talk about his amazing book that has really changed my life, The Light After Death. Thank you so much,
Sweet.
Vinney.
Thank you,
Thank you
Vinney.
so much. See you in the next part.
Please like and share.
And you can subscribe at thecurioussoulpodcast.com for all things curious.